Good afternoon. I'm Alan Unell, and this series of videos is Healthcare Advocacy, where we address problems in the healthcare system and try to make a better system for all of us. Today we're going to talk about lupus. Before we do, down below in the YouTube description box, you'll find links to all of the news articles, studies, background material, and there's a host of references in the Healthcare Advocacy newsletter, which is the text for today's video. Okay, let's get started. The cause of lupus has long escaped doctors trying to treat the autoimmune disease. However, a study that was published about a week ago identified a cause of lupus based on molecular defects in patients' blood. Lupus overproduces specific cells that attack the body's organs and tissues. The incurable disease affects hundreds of thousands of people in the U.S. People with lupus typically experience extreme pain and fatigue, swelling of muscles and joints, skin rashes. There's a butterfly-shaped rash that appears somewhere, cheeks and nose. You can get fever and hair loss. It causes problems all across the body. Kidney failure can result, seizures, memory problems. It can be fatal. It attacks the brain and central nervous system, can cause heart problems. It's estimated that the number of people with the disease in the U.S. could be as high as 1.5 million. That estimate is from the Lupus Foundation of America. Researchers have been trying to strike a balance with the cells to help regulate lupus. Now, treatment currently relies on immunosuppressants to reduce inflammation and pain. However, the drugs don't often effectively treat the disease, and their side effects hinder the body's ability to stave off infections. Up until this point, all therapy for lupus is a blunt instrument. It's a broad immunosuppression, said the study's co-author, Dr. Jae-hook Choi, an associate professor of dermatology and a Northwestern medicine dermatologist, in a statement. By identifying a cause for the disease, we found a potential cure that will not have the side effects of current therapies. Choi's colleagues at Northwestern and researchers at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston took part in the study published in the journal Nature. They compared blood samples of 19 patients with systemic lupus erythematosus, the most common form of lupus, and 19 patients without the immune disease. Researchers identified a new cause for lupus. The patients in the study had a chemical imbalance that controlled how their T cells, a type of white blood cell that's part of the immune system, reacted to infection. The researchers found that lupus patients had too much of a protein called interferon, which helps fight infection, and not enough of aryl hydrocarbon receptor, AHR proteins, which regulate the body's response to infection. This resulted in an overabundance of disease-promoting cells attacking the body. Replacing deficient AHR molecules with active ones could heal wounds instead of further injuring them, the researchers said. The researchers put AHR activating molecules into lupus patients' blood samples, which appeared to reprogram the lupus-causing cells that could promote healing, according to their news release. The study offers a potential for new therapeutic strategies in lupus treatment. The goal is to target the disease-causing cells to better protect patients. All this was released by Northwestern University, and there is a link in the Healthcare Advocacy newsletter to their news release. Let's talk briefly about cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is one of the most common genetic disorders. It attacks the thick mucus buildup in the lungs. It's one of the most common genetic disorders causing a thick mucus buildup in the lungs and in other parts of the body. It causes breathing problems and infections. Researchers have now developed a gene editing approach that effectively corrects the most common mutation that causes cystic fibrosis, found in 85% of those patients. With further development, it could pave the way for treatments that are administered once and have very few side effects. A 3-drug cocktail known as Trikafta has greatly improved patient quality of life since its development in 2019, but it can cause cataracts and liver damage. It has to be taken daily. Guess what the cost is? $300,000 a year. The new method precisely and durably corrects the mutation in the human lung cells, restores cell function to similar levels of that of Trikafta. The approach is based on a technique called prime editing, which can make insertions, deletions, and substitutions up to hundreds of base pairs long in the genome with few unwanted byproducts. The result was done by the Broad Institute and Harvard. Down below in the newsletter, you'll find a link to their release at the Broad Institute. Let's talk about emergency department deaths. When you go to or are taken to an emergency department at a hospital, you sort of expect that since it's an emergency, you'll be attended to swiftly. Not so. We have written about the process of boarding, where staff puts you somewhere and tells you they'll get to you. Issues have been reported on how low-income patients are shunted aside in favor of others with easy-to-process insurance. This according to Santa Clara University. I have one friend who went to the emergency department with chest pains, and he waited about 12 hours before they thought they could check in on him. Another friend went and waited just about as long and was busy having a heart attack while sitting and waiting. After 12 hours, he was dismissed. By the way, staff in the emergency department never told him he had a heart attack. He found out the next day from his regular doctor. Last week in Vallejo, California, actually it's a little more than a week ago, maybe about 10 days, it got about as bad as it can get. A man was suffering from chest pains and he died in the Kaiser Vallejo emergency waiting room after a lengthy wait without a treatment in an incident that has raised concerns about the hospital's ability to properly treat patients amid a staffing shortage in their emergency department. 53-year-old Francisco Delgadillo Machuca went to, he goes by the name of Pancho, he drove straight to Kaiser Vallejo from his job in San Rafael after his chest pain started on the afternoon of December 8th. Now, this was reported about 10 days ago or so, but you can see this took place last year in December. He waited in the emergency room for 8 hours without treatment until he collapsed. His family was notified that he died around midnight. As his chest pains worsened, his son called 911, and the paramedics arrived at Kaiser. They spoke to the staff there, and he was taken back and examined and then returned to the waiting room, and that's where he died. His death happened just 3 days after the Kaiser Vallejo emergency room nurses circulated a petition demanding the hospital increase staffing to ensure safe patient care. You get it? How many times do we have to hear this? Raquel Benito, the California Nurses Association union rep for Kaiser Vallejo's emergency room nurses, told the Vallejo Sun, that's a newspaper, that low staffing frequently means that there's no triage nurse available to monitor patients in the waiting room, and that 10-hour waits are common. Okay, here we are again. Understaffing means patients suffer and die. These places have licenses to operate. Many are tax exempt, meaning that we, the people, give them a huge cash break, and they cut staff to save money. It doesn't matter whether they're for-profit or non-profit. These places save money by cutting staff. They allow people in the waiting room to die because there isn't enough staff. Safe staffing is the answer. Or perhaps we should take away their tax-exempt status, or maybe their license. Look, we can remind Congress and our state elected officials that here is a place where their action can actually save lives. P.S. The safe nursing staffing bills at the federal level are Senate Bill 1113 and H.R. 2530, their companion bills. Of course, if we had H.R. 3421, Medicare for All, you know what? It has the safe staffing in it. Okay, look, we can take action. You can find, I'll put in a link so you can get in touch with your elected representatives directly into the YouTube description box. And the first action is to let your federal, there are two actions, one at the federal and one at the state level. At the federal level, if you go to your cell phone and send a text message to 50409, here's the message you'll send. SIGN, S-I-G-N, space, P-D-C-T-E-Z. That's SIGN, P-D-C-T-E-Z to 50409. You'll send a message to your senators and member of Congress. I'll read it to you real quick. I'm your constituent and I'm fed up with reading about patients dying in the emergency department because the facility is understaffed to save money. The latest one was reported in Vallejo, California at Kaiser Permanente. Here's a link to the news story. That's I included in the email they'll get. There are two things you can do. Number one, pass safe staffing levels for hospitals. And two, and the bill is H.R. 2350 and Senate Bill 1113. You also have a hammer to enforce the rules. No federal payments until they comply with safe staffing. And if they're a nonprofit, tax exempt, they lose their tax exempt status. Those are the rules. There have to be consequences if you have rules. I expect you to move forward on this. After all, you can save lives instead of letting people die of neglect in the waiting room. There's a second action at the state level. This does not apply in the state of Washington. Washington has safe nursing staffing, but it's the same technique. It's essentially the same message, but a different resist bot on your cell phone. You text SIGN, S-I-G-N, space, P-I-F-F-A-C. That's SIGN, P-I-F-F-A-C to 50409, and you'll be sending the same notice to your state elected representatives. Okay, that's pretty much what I have for you today. I will point out that when we complained about this in the state of Washington, I received a call from my elected representative from the legislative analyst there, and she said, Alan, I need to tell you, we just passed it and it went into effect beginning of July. So they listen when you do this. Okay, let them know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. You can put them in the comment box, like, share, subscribe, or you can send me a note at healthcareadvocacy1@gmail.com. Healthcare Advocacy 1 is all one word. Okay, have a good day. We'll talk later.